Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Gilberto Guevara. He's with the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust, and we're talking about the types of programs that they have, including their entrepreneurship development program and their resilience programs, that they're helping businesses and communities and organizations become more resilient and rebuild in order to be better off in the future. So stay tuned as I talk to Gilberto about these things. Hi, Gilberto. How are you today?
We are doing very well, very hopeful with all of the changes that are occurring at the political level that will impact our program areas.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the trust. What the focus is.
Right now, with a Maria recovery efforts, we're concentrating in giving and in providing an assistance a hand to the Puerto Rico government entities and institutions in solidifying all of the different programs. There are many agencies that have been reduced to almost a non-functional level. The capacity isn't here with all of the migration of Puerto Ricans to the United States. There's a lack of competency in many of the agencies. So the trust has been uh, edging their resources and their capacity to assist the government in rolling out some of the programs that were created with a Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief Funds, what is known as CDBGDR, as a result or post Maria. An example of that is we're currently managing $92.5 million for the Regrow Fund, which is meant to assist farmers as well as fishermen in recovery efforts. There are many other efforts that we can talk as we continue the interview where the
Yeah.
trust is really embedded for the recovery of Puerto Rico.
And so I know you're doing a lot of work in resilience and kind of that rebuild piece. So tell me a little bit about those reconstruction, rebuild efforts.
There are two things that are going on. One, the mission of the trust obviously is to serve as the bridge between the scientific community, in all of the science, the technology, and through research efforts for best practices and for practical things that could be implemented. An example of that is the agreement that we have with the NASA disaster program. As early as yesterday, we were having a conversation with a MIT Lincoln Labs to make the best use of all of the algorithms that they had produced with the LIDAR information, which was very costly and was paid for by FEMA. That contains over 38,000 files of the island post Maria. So we're in the process of making that information readable or usable, not only to the academicians and the researchers, but we want to lower it or bring it down to the level of the people so that one of the ideas that we're working on through artificial intelligence and machine learning, again, using technologies, enable someone to type in their address and then be able to locate the data as well as the imagery that is collected in all of these scientific databases, much like Google, but on a scientific level. So that's one effort. The other efforts are in rising in starting up a sea level rise institute for the Caribbean to try to combat some of the climate change. So the equation here is not to restore things the way they were, because we know we are susceptible to hurricanes. We are now getting ready for the 2021 hurricane season. Don't know how that is going to turn out. But in essence, through the information that we've gathered and the best practices and the research that has been conducted to enable the policymakers as well as the practitioners. We are engaged with the architects, with the engineers, to build back better. So in that sense, that piece is in place. The other piece that we're working very heavily on is on the construction of resiliency. So we are survivors of many events. The latest one, obviously, is COVID that is taking its toll now, not only in Puerto Rico, but everywhere else. But people are building some resiliency on that. We've also had seismic events, earthquakes. Puerto Rico's prone. We're in that Caribbean tectonic plate that moves from time to time, and then the ongoing and the seasonal flooding that occurs. So all of those events require the application of the information, not only the historical information, but also the projection or the modeling or what we can do in terms of predictive behaviors, not only of the natural features, but also of the people, so that we can drive them to build back better and be safe in the future risks and vulnerabilities that we're exposed to.
Yeah, and I think you guys have been doing a lot of work with that business piece, helping businesses become more resilient, helping communities, organizations. So, I mean, it's multi-leveled, right? A response that's required.
That is correct. Yeah. For us, because it's such a huge piece, we have selected the area of energy resiliency. We know that energy is essential, particularly in the manufacturing. And when you look at the GDP, where is the economic base of Puerto Rico? And it relies on its pharmaceutical production and some of the other light manufacturing. Right now, the government is enticing and bringing into the island aerospace manufacturing and capabilities. But the essence of businesses, as you know, in the economic development arena, is the small business, is the predominant a producer of jobs and employment. And that's what we're looking at. We're aiming to create different models and different forms in which these businesses can become energy resilient. So we're looking obviously at what funding is available now. As I indicated at my beginning statement, we're hopeful with a Biden administration of what we hear are going to be a rollout of many other resources that could be applied to this area. And in that point, we also want to be a resource or an assistant to the government in the rollout and the application of the laws. There are many laws that are written that are never acted on and are never useful. But in Puerto Rico, because of Maria precisely, Law 17 created the energy resiliency and environmental drive that takes us to the year 2030, which is not too far from now, to a 40% goal of being free of fossil fuel in the generation of power. The ultimate goal, and it's a big, 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 big goal, is for the year 2050 to be 100% free of fossil fuels in the production of energy. So that's why I said, the field is very big in terms of what we can do in resiliency, but the trust is focused on this energy piece in the energy resiliency for small businesses and entrepreneurs. We know the big firms are able to take care of themselves and they have made their investments and they're quite good about producing what they need to self-sustain, but not so much the small businessman.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm watching this and I'm interested, I've never thought of Puerto Rico as a place to do business, or I'm now looking at it going, what would you say are the best opportunities for an outsider right now to look at Puerto Rico?
From the perspective of the community, because we are part of this community, we have several programs within the trust. There are 18 programs altogether, but we have a column that specializes on entrepreneurial development. So we start with Colmena 66, and that's where I would point most of the individuals that are interested in starting business or doing business in Puerto Rico. We have mapped out an entrepreneurial route. So it takes you from the very initial phase of the conceptualization of an idea to driving that idea to a design. And in each one of those steps, we have identified different businesses or institutions that can help the entrepreneur develop that phase all the way down to the actual launch of the program. So we take them through all of the phases of the creation of a business. That's in Colmena 66. Those resources are there. Not to fall short on those efforts, we've also created, and the trust has Parallel 18, which is our incubator slash accelerator. It's more an accelerator type where we provide funding for the entrepreneurs that have innovative ideas and in the technology areas to come in, and we house them in the facilities. We have an entire floor in one of the buildings in downtown San Juan where they can work free of charge to them with all of the supports, internet, the obviously air conditioning, parking, and whatnot for them to develop their facility. And then for the more mature business, we have the Business Resiliency Innovation Program. In that program, we have specialized and are laser focused on businesses that need innovations or that have created best practices that are good to share with other businesses in that arena. And we've had many successes there. Successes from uh, just in the seismic event. We had no idea that there were many corporations, small corporations that had begun in their R&D process or in the development process to put together these kits, solar kits, mobile solar kits, mobile trailers. And we were able to ask for those trailers to be donated to assist the communities that were affected by the seismic event. And while the bulk of these resources, there were 20 of these trailers that came out of the woodwork by us touching base and knocking on doors that
Yeah.
were employed by the local community, but they also help local businesses keep on and stay in business. The other example of that is one of our facilities in the south part of the island was opened during the seismic event for businesses that had lost their facilities to operate so that they could operate free of cost to them with all of the supports, the internet, the air conditioning, the parking lot. So that's what we do with the mature programs. Mhm.
That's great. Well, I know your organization is unique and quite exciting. So that's wonderful to get a bit of an overview. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that perhaps I didn't ask about it you wanted to mention?
I think we're hopeful, as I said, now that we have all of these lessons in Puerto Rico, to begin to look to our neighbors in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
There are many folks who are stovepiping, and that's what we intend to do is just cut a lot of that stovepiping or the uh, going vertical and not sharing all of that information. That's what the trust is aiming to do in the next iteration of programs is now that we have this knowledge base, for instance, and I mentioned NASA earlier today, our server is connected to the NASA disaster program server. So the amount of information there is in giga terabytes of information that could be useful for businesses. So we welcome businesses that want to come in, look at what we have, and we will put them through the different agencies and the different programs that are available to them. That service we can provide to them. SBIR, which I didn't mention and was not discussed, the Small Business Innovation grant programs. The grant programs that we have are also there available for the researchers that need that extra umph with the support, the financial support to continue the research for in any physical sciences or any of the areas of resiliency. So I would welcome folks to come into our website, which is relatively easy to use and to look at. It's the typical www.pwc PR, as in Puerto Rico, PR Science Trust, sciencetrust.org, to come in and take a look at our programs.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Leanne. Nice talking to you and to your audience.
You too.